Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Lions Guy podcast. And on today's episode, we have my friend Matthias Giraud, aka Super Frenchie, who is a professional mountain athlete specialized in alpinism, steep skiing, and base jumping. He's also a 2 times world record holder of the highest ski base jump, which we're going to talk about because this is new to me, but it's been fun to watch. He's also been highlighted as Men's Journal's 50 Most Adventurous Men, GoPro's first viral video of an avalanche cliff jump, which we're going to talk about as well, and Super Frenchie.
What's up? How are you?
Appreciate you getting up early, knocking this out today, man. Super happy to have you on, man. Give us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So yeah, I'm a mountain athlete. I'm specialized in skiing and base jumping. So base jumping, for those who don't know, is jumping off a cliff or a building or an antenna, or a bridge with a parachute, and so it's free falling of static objects, pretty much. And I've combined that for many years with skiing. And I started as a ski racer, started big mountain skiing, which is free ride skiing, jumping off cliffs and using whatever you can find on the terrain to have fun, doing backflips and things like that. And then the landing's starting to hurt, like when you start to go above 50, 60 feet or 90 feet or whatever. And then I was like, I gotta throw on a parachute. And then by throwing on a parachute, I could not compromise anymore by trying to go small on skis because the landings hurt. Now I could go bigger than it ever could on skis because all of a sudden I had this contraption on my back that allowed me to survive and ski unsurvivable lines technically and turn them into a playground. So yeah, through mountain sports and combining them, I've been able to turn treacherous environments into playgrounds. So it's been great.
It's awesome, man. And so you came into the group, right? The newly named the Uncommon group with Joel and Jeff and all the guys. And I right, wrong, or different, I hadn't heard of you. And then they were like, hey, welcome, Super Frenchie, blah, blah. I'm like, Super Frenchie. And then I get online and we're watching one of your videos, and it's just you just skiing down a mountain, and all of a sudden it's like, whew, you're out. And I had no idea that was coming, right? And man, I tell you, man, watching some of your videos, especially in the movie Super Frenchie, that's I watched it on Prime, right? Super Frenchie, the documentary of kind of your whole story and the things that you're doing. Man, I'll tell you, your stuff has been one. My stomach drops on a couple of the shots. There was one where you're going off, and I guess for people not understanding even what I'm trying to say, if you imagine someone skiing down a mountain and they just ski right off the side of the cliff and they're gone. And so Frenchie does this, but he's got a GoPro on it. So you're living it, and it's awesome, man. It's freaking awesome.
Thank you. I'm glad I could seize your heart.
So tell me a little bit about your background and where you're from and kind of how you got to where you are now doing this.
So, wow, you're gonna get the whole thing. So, I was born in Normandy in France in September 24th, 1983. So I was born in north of France, an hour from Paris, cow fields and everything, right? My parents, my dad's from southwest of France, grew up in Aveyron, was born in 1939, so I grew up hearing his war stories. And my mother's Dutch, so bicultural household, and kind of like a crazy family environment. My mother was very much a overbearing, mentally abusive, emotionally abusive kind of lady, so that came with its challenges. I had kind of the easy side of it, honestly, compared to my sisters. I'm one of 4 kids. Because I was the youngest one, the only boy, kind of like the little prince of the family. So I could kind of get away with everything that I wanted to do, almost, But the family environment was very unstable, And it was very strange because my dad was a doctor, so I technically lived a privileged lifestyle, but it came at its own cost, And it's not like you're the son of the doctor. It's not like you can go around and be like, life at home is crazy. You know what I mean? It's like whatever. You're the son of the doctor. You get everything you want. You know, and so I just kind of did my thing. And one of the fortunate things that I had, though, is my parents had a vacation home in the Alps. And so we spent every single holiday there. And in the summer, you know, my mom was not necessarily very nurturing. So she would just send me to the Alps, and I would just stay at friends' houses, and they were farmers, and I would just work the fields with the kids and things like that. You know, so it's really cool because I became a mountain kid. So that unstable, suffocating household actually gave me a ton of opportunities outside of the household. And so I naturally gravitated towards the outside influences that were outside of the house. And I didn't reflect on the fact that it's me more now looking back as an adult, more being like, oh, house was crazy. And I looked at this and I was attracted to this. But, you know, when you're a kid, you just, your home is your home, right? Your parents are your parents. It's just the way it is. And that's, so I was always, I think, empowered and had this, I don't know, intrinsic desire to just go and create myself and just make things happen. And I was infinitely drawn to the mountains. And so that's it. Then my parents moved to south of France. My dad was an ENT doctor, so he took over practice in south of France. And then all of a sudden, you know, that was a lot harder. He was 50 years old. They couldn't afford the house in the Alps anymore. They sold it, and we're living in a little apartment. So, you know, it's kind of like, you know, we're on a budget, you know, it was tricky. But for me, there's no other questions. Like, I had to be in the mountains. So I just bugged my parents over and over again. And eventually I got accepted to a ski racing team in the Alps at 11 in Chamonix. They wouldn't let me go, thinking I was too young. And then I kept pushing and pushing. And I was able to somehow qualify for the national championships through the ski school, which is where just the tourists go skiing normally. But I qualified enough for that to qualify for the ski school national championships. And I got in the top 10. And that allowed me to enter the regular national championships of all the ski teams. I didn't do great, but at least I had my foot out the door, right? And then I kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And then I entered a ski racing team of Nîmes, which is another city in south of France. And every Friday night, I would hop on a bus, spend all night on the bus, wake up at the ski resort, go race all day, come back on the Sunday night, do my homework, and go to school on Monday. You know, so I did that every weekend.
And what age were you when like all this is going on?
11, 12, 13, you know, so just hungry to make it happen. You know, I was like, I'm a skier. This is what I'm going to do in my life. And eventually at 13, because I just couldn't keep going with a rhythm like that. It was also France. So, you know, that wasn't super expensive. You know, it was really cheap to be in a ski team like that. You have a lot of helps from towns and local governments and things like that to support, you know, teams and athletic endeavors and stuff like that. So that was a great thing. Skiing in North America is super expensive and crazy. You want to race, it's going to cost like $3,000 a freaking season, you know? And in France, it was your fees for the ski team were like, they were like 500 francs, which is not even $100 for the season, you know? So it was great. And then but I just couldn't keep going like that, you know? And so it was just too much. And so all of a sudden at 13, then we had family friends that took me in as like my adoptive parents in the Alps, like, come and live with us and you can go to the ski academy here. And then I went to the ski academy in the Alps, and all of a sudden I became a mountain kid at 13, 14. And that year changed my life. I just skied so hard. I actually trained with 2 different ski teams because I knew I had technical deficiencies compared to the real mountain kids that skied way more than me. I wasn't as good, but I was more driven and I could take more than they could because I think I was more resilient. You know, they were born in this. A lot of them took that for granted. A lot of them were kids of ex-national champions or Olympic champions or people from the national French ski team. So it was almost expected of them to be great skiers, and they were great skiers, but they didn't have the fire. I had the fire, and that made the difference. So anyway, it was just kind of funny because out of all these kids in ski academy, I'm the only one who turned pro, and I'm the only one who wasn't born in the mountains. So,
oh, you remind me. We talk about it often on here sometimes, but like there's a book by Angela Duckworth called Grit, and she ends up pointing out that, you know, grit is a combination of passion and perseverance, right? There's certainly, you know, for high achievers, there's certainly a perseverance element, but she pointed out like the ones who really make it are the ones that are just the most passionate about it.
Yeah.
and as well are therefore most willing to persevere through the failures, the work, the challenges, or whatever. So it sounds like, as you described that, that's what it was reminding me of, that, like, you had the most fire, and you're willing to do whatever it took to get where you wanted to be on it.
Yeah, I just, whatever thing they threw away, I just took it on, and our ski coach liked to test us, he would be like, all right, so you gotta tuck in and speed, like speed position, like, going as fast as you can from the top of the mountain, you gotta hit this jump there, and then there, and a lot of half the time he would say this just to scare us, but I'd even question, I was like, all right, coach said we have to do that, it means that we can do it, and so I just drop in and do it, and I scared the hell out of him. He actually even called my parents in, he was like, you gotta tell Matthias to slow down because he's not even scared, but he's scaring me. But it was, I think for me, it was more than just passion and resilience. It was also obviously US passion, but I was so eager to just make it happen because this is what I want to do with my life. But also, I had a chip on my shoulder. I wasn't a mountain kid, and that just created extra fire. And yeah, and for me, it was just, I think especially at a young age, you're kind of looking for acceptance. You kind of want to belong to a group. Now I really, I've just, I became kind of like a lone wolf. I just kind of do my thing, and then come back to the community and then go do my thing. You know what I mean? It's more like Max from where the wild things are. Just go crazy and then come back. But at that time as a kid, you kind of looking for acceptance and belonging. And that year, I just wanted to earn my spot, not just be accepted, earn my spot as a mountain kid. And
were you getting much pushback from the mountain kids for not being one?
A little bit at first when I showed up on my first day in school. A kid in school who actually is still one of my really good friends in the Alps now, but he came up to me and he was like, "What the fuck are you doing here? You're not from the mountains. You're from south of France." In my mind, I was like, well, first of all, I'm not from south of France. Like, I hated south of France. It smells like lavender and it sucks when all you dream about are the Alps, And I was, but I'm not going to tell my whole life, like, I'm born in Normandy. My mother's Dutch. My dad's from south. It's like, no.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, well, my only response was, well, yeah, I wasn't born here, but let's go skiing, And when I went skiing, they were like, God damn, it's not pretty, but damn, he has balls. That's the thing. I was so freaking hungry, and I think I had a lot of courage just because I was so eager that for me, it was mandatory to go as hard as I could, no matter what the cost would be. So
was the home life, it sounds like the home life necessitated your own independence. Was that like a driver for you as well, like that put you out there, like in wanting to be there more? I don't know if I'm asking a question well, but like, were you dwelling on it, like the home life with your mom or whatever it was that like in the back of your mind, or were you out there in the mountains and it was an escape from that, or what?
later on, a little bit when I was more a teenager, when you reflect on things, right? But I think I think there was an opportunity there because it's also naturally who I was. I was very independent always. At 5 years old, like I threw on my ski gear and walked to the ski shop by myself, like a kilometer, threw my ski gear on, and then checked in into ski lessons by myself. Like, I didn't want anybody to hold my hand at 5, And so I've always had that desire to just be on my own, and do my thing. And it's also like, we all want love, yearn for love, right? And I think I didn't have that. It's weird because I had an affectionate mom, but he wasn't love. He was more like a tool of control. You know what I mean? So I think I think for me, passion is, it was the love for what I do, the love for the mountains, and eventually, like the love for someone who's super important as well, right? But for me as a kid, it's just like, it was just, true love for the mountains, and I think the home environment just fed that independent spirit even more.
Right. Yeah, that's what it sounds like, for sure. Was there anyone that, absent, that home environment that might be a little bit more storybook or traditional, right? Was there anyone that was influencing you, like in this direction, that you would find really influential in your path?
Well, I think that's the thing. It's kind of like, if you don't have a suitable home life, a lot of the time, um, you end up having you end up having your developing your own family in a way,
Mhm.
And I was super fortunate to have amazing mentors or people that took me under their wing. I don't know if it was because they saw potential or because I was just this kid with a lot of fire and always a big smile. And, like, I mean, a smile can hide many things, but I always showed up, with a good attitude and eagerness and relentless energy. So they were like, oh, cool. Well, let's take on this kid.
Yeah.
And maybe some of them knew enough or were perceptive enough to be like, well, shit, he's got all that fucked up thing on the side. And I don't know. I was too young to reflect or realize on this. When looking back, I can think of a couple of people that were probably like feeling bad.
Mm.
I'm like, okay, let's just take care of that kid.
Sure.
And, but bottom the line is whatever the motivation was, I was super fortunate to have a lot of outside positive influences and people take me under their wing. And, I mean, we can't do it alone. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you got to be a
Well,
guide, but you also have to have the courage to let others guide you, and that's super important.
yeah, it's a lesson, my oldest is 13 now. And it's a lesson I try to impart on him, which is this, is that, man, the more you show that you want it and you're willing to work, it seems like the more people will be willing to help you, right? Like, especially as a youth coach now, right? You can see it, right? The coaches and coaching staff will be drawn to the kids that demonstrate they want it, right? Like they just want to be here, they want to put in the work, and that's attractive, even as like a coach student type of thing. And I try to explain that to the kids, like, man, you get up here and put up, man, like the world will rally behind you because we want to see you succeed too.
Yeah,
And as opposed to the kid that's got the bad attitude or really like ho hum or
yeah,
whatever, like it's like we almost don't want to invest our energy there because they aren't even demonstrating that they want it. And then someone like you, it's like showing that you want it. That whether it was empathy to your situation, I would say it's probably more so like the admiration of your drive and wanting to see like how far you can go.
yeah. I mean, it's perhaps, yeah. No, thank you. And I don't know if I'd go as far as admiration, but I guess maybe it was endearing to them.
Sure.
And they're like, "Fuck yeah, let's do something."
Exactly.
This kid wants to go, and he's gonna go no matter what. And
Yeah.
I always had that. Even still now, I'm 38 years old, and I still have this drive. I remember when I started skydiving, like even some instructors were like, "Fuck, dude, this kid." I started base jumping at only 44 skydives, and you're supposed to have 100 to 200. So I was way underqualified. But coming from skiing, I could do double backflip on skis, and I had aerial sense, and I could jump big cliffs and stuff. So I knew how to manage my body in the air. But yeah, I think a lot of people, like, especially there was one guy, Adam Buckner, who was one of my instructors at Skydive New Mexico. That's where I learned to jump when I was going to school in Colorado. It was the closest drop zone. So I drove through the desert for 4 hours in my little Saab 900, that I bought for $500 and just barely made it to the drop zone and packed parachutes to pay for jumps. And one of the reasons why I couldn't get all the jumps that I wanted on time for my projects was also because I didn't have the cash.
Mm.
And one day I go to settle the bill, for my jumps for the day. And I was like, shit, I don't even know if I have enough money on my account. And I show up at the desk and the manifest, the guy's like, oh no, Frenchie, you're taken care of. I'm like, what are you talking about? I probably owe you guys $150. He's like, you might want to go thank Adam. And I'm like, what? So I walk over to Adam, and Adam's like, yeah, man, I just want to help you out. I just don't want you to die base jumping. And, being an instructor, I have all this the credit on my account. And so I just threw some of my credit your way to pay for your jumps. And it's like, Adam, that's huge. Thank you. He paid maybe for 4 or 5 jumps that day. But that touched me so much because the instructor was paying for the jump of his student. That never happens. And still to this day, he's a close friend. He's always helping me out when I need some, to track some gear, some specific stuff, whatever. He's very involved in the skydiving community, and he still helps me, and I remind him of that story often. And he was like, yeah, man, I just didn't want you to die, and so that's another example of a person but he didn't tell me, oh, hold on, Frenchie, you're going too fast. He didn't, it wasn't discouraging me to take on all these big challenges, he was trying to help me any way he could, to increase my chances of survival and success. And that he is, one of several people. He stands out, obviously, but he's one of several people that really, did a ton for me. And I was always super humbled and it's an overused word, but grateful as well, and um, yeah, I think I was super fortunate to have all these amazing people taking me under their wing. But I think mainly part of it is now, because when you get mentored, your duty is to pass it on. So I try to help on as many people as I can, and you get to do that, right? And I think maybe one of the things that was fitting their code, because that's what fits my code now too, is I help someone, especially if they don't act entitled. And I never acted entitled. I was like, it was almost the opposite. It was like, I might not be worth it, or have the skills, but I'm fucking hungry and I want to make it happen,
Yeah.
but I wasn't asking for pity either. So
Sure.
there was this balance, and I think I see that in some people too. And I try to help out as much as I can, because people help me along the way. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it, man. What do you think is like, amongst your journey so far, like what are some of the more major challenges you had to overcome, whether it's intrinsically or, or introvert, like mentally or physically or what?
well, I think it's always a balance. No matter what challenge you take on, it's always a battle of challenge of mental, physical, and emotional, and the mental side, obviously, when you take on something super dangerous, well, you got to wrap your head around it and be able to elaborate a strategy to be able to get it done.
Mm.
Physically, you got to get ready, but it's also overcoming injuries. I've had probably over 30 broken bones, and you don't crash often in what I do, but when you crash, a lot of stuff goes, so I've had to overcome significant injuries. And then the emotional side, obviously growing up, and I'm a super sensitive person too, and I think I was hiding that a lot out of self-preservation through extra exuberance. And so people would be like, wow, that dude is fucking crazy. And it's kind of like you kind of weed out people this way, either like people that want to go a little beyond that, you kind of want to let them in. And people that just stop at this, you kind of know you want to keep them at a distance.
And so you're saying that you're sensitive to how other people react to you or treat you,
I
or
think
what do you mean?
this, but I'm just sensitive as a person. You know what I mean? Like I could take things too hard very easily and things
Mm,
like that, which is
mm,
also part of the drive. Like you get triggered, easily, and are you super responsive to your environment? I don't want to say necessarily triggered. That's not necessarily the right definition, but super responsive to my environment. You can you feel the love, but you feel the pain too. You feel the sadness, like you feel it all. But the thing is,
mm,
I never try to shy away from that. For me, it's
mm,
almost like I was very sensitive, but I always wanted to feel even more, and because for me it was, I always thought that emotions are there to empower you, not impair you. You just got
mm.
to learn to digest them and accept them. And
Right.
that's definitely something I think that I understood at an early age. But it's overwhelming when you're a teenager and your foundational years to understand your emotions. It's a lot to take on, So I think that was some of the challenges. And then also, digesting, my family history. And my sister committed suicide when I was 18. She was 27. I
Mm,
recognized the body, all this stuff. So, some tumultuous family history and personal trauma, and then also taking on some big challenges. Sorry, it's an emotional roller coaster. So I think the biggest challenges were probably the emotional side, and but then because the physical and the mental side is it just finds its place once you have your goals, right? He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow. So that's it. Once you get a direction, you do what it takes to get there. And I'm kind of one of those guys. I don't have the military background that you have. I really admire guys from special forces or do some very demanding high risk things, but I think for me it's kind of like the legionnaires code, from the French for legion is la mission est sacrée, tu l'exécutes jusqu'au bout. The mission is sacred, you carry it out to the end. And I think it's very military like, which I'm not a military guy, of course, but I think for me that was it. It's like from an early age, it's like I'm gonna get the mission done no matter what it takes, and that's it. So
yeah, that's that perseverance, and then I love it, man. I love, like, you're just you are that. Like, you know, I see that. I've saw that since I've come across you and come to know you. Like, you are just on a mission. Like, even yesterday checking in, you're like, yeah, I just landed, you know, in training. And I guess the other thing I wanted to acknowledge of you, man, is like, coming to know you, like, it's not like X Games jackass kind of like just wild, you know, reckless. Like, you were super professional. Like, you were, when it comes to your craft, like I don't mean like you're super fun and you love this and you put your love on display, but you know, I've definitely seen how you're very serious about it. You know, you're very meticulous and very professional. Like, you know, it's not wild and crazy. I mean, your current project, which I guess we'll mention here now, like the adrenaline sucks. You're like, look, it's not about like seeking the adrenaline, you know. So speak a little bit about like
Yeah,
that.
I think for me, it's also there's different stages, right? You know, when you're a young, explosive teenager, you know, I was the guy that's very much jackass-like. I
Oh,
would
so
be the
you
guy, you know, like taking
you're
off his
saying you've
clothes,
matured from that.
and yeah, yeah. But I think the thing is also positioning of stuff, right? You know, I always wanted to be the crazy guy. I think I was the crazy guy, but at the same time, it was a process of self-preservation too, you know. And I'd be the kid showing up at school and blowing up a condom on my head while I'd be just doing like on a skateboard, like hauling ass through people while screaming like an animal, like, "Rah!" You know, like I was that guy. I liked the attention, you know, it was fun. But I think the attention was also a way to keep people at bay a little bit too, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And maybe it's like the Chris Farley thing, you know, being a little out there, crazy, but at the same time, you just, you know, like overwhelmed a lot.
Right.
So, but I was always um, attracted to irreverence and exuberance. You know, that's a part of me. You know, for a while, I had like, you know, super bright pink hair, or red dreadlocks, or mohawk, or you know, I have tattoos, things like that. You know, I like that stuff, but I also understood that what I wanted to take on, and even at an early age, was unforgiving and could be very gruesome, especially growing up in the Alps. You know, one person dies every 3 days in the mountains. You know,
Mm.
I lost a lot of friends and know a lot of people that got really, really messed up, you know. And so, yeah, no matter how exuberant you are, you know that, well, when it's time to go, you know, shit gets real and
Mm.
you better be prepared. So I understood that from early on, that I had to be prepared and be, and fine tune my craft.
Mm.
And I had a big crash in 2013. You know, spent 3 days in a coma. I had double fracture my femur. It was before the birth of my son. You know, brain hemorrhage and all that. And after that, it was on the road rebuilding myself as an athlete. I replaced explosiveness with consistency and meticulous attention to details. And that's how I do things. You know, I keep saying that, you know, we're dumb creatures of habits. So you become what you do. And so if you just, for ski racing was like that too. I always the sections where I knew I struggle, I practiced them over and over again, like the double, triple gate, or you know, the carrying as much speed through the flats to be able to not lose time, things like that. And again, because maybe I knew I had a chip on my shoulder, and I knew that technically I wasn't perfect, but I knew I could overpower people in other segments of this, and so I had to make it work and create my own special mix. And the only way to create my own special mix was to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. So that's what I did.
Yeah,
And I
and
still do.
you can tell in the couple movies I've seen of you, just that very fact. And I guess when it comes to the things like seeing, you know, loss of friends, these injuries, or even your own accident, and is the 13 one the one that was in the Super Frenchie documentary where you
Yeah,
like,
yeah. That's
yeah.
the big crash I had in the Super Frenchie movie. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man, that was
Brutal.
wild. Has any of that ever caused you to kind of second guess where you're at or how far you want to go or continuing on?
Of course. I mean, you know, it's doubting means you care. We all
Mm.
doubt, you know, and I think that's maybe, you know, the Super Frenchie name is funny because it's a name that someone, you know, gave to me at a ski competition, but it's also kind of like it's kind of like a joke because obviously I'm not a superhero. Nobody
Mm.
is, you know. It's kind of like you think you're a superhero and just, you know, fake it till you become it in a way. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like what the Super Frenchie thing is. It's kind of like it's a ridiculous nickname, but it's kind of what it is. Like I always that I am the person who I'm probably one of the people that you'll meet who overthinks the most.
Mm.
I overthink so much until it's go time, and then I'm gonna freaking go, and I'm gonna get this thing done, And once I commit, I freaking commit, But everything leading to that, it's mentally just draining and emotionally draining and physically generally brutal, to get there. Some jumps that I do, sometimes I wait for 8 years to do it, and it takes me 2 days to climb to get to where I want to go and ski with 50 pounds on your back. So it's not easy, and it comes with all kinds of struggle. And so I doubt a lot. And after my big crash, I questioned whether I should pursue my vocation, but also realized it was a test to my dedication in itself. And doubting means that you're reassessing, and there's nothing wrong with that. When you hear people saying quitters don't quit, it's like, well, sometimes you got to freaking quit to be able to get your mission done. And I don't hesitate to turn around now. I replaced over determination more with omnipresence in the mountains, and omnipresence requires an element of doubt because you're analyzing. Analysis comes with pragmatism, and that that overthinking, or that element of that emotional roller coaster when you take on a big challenge, can affect your pragmatism. And so that's why I always doubt. Doubting is very good, because that's also what's going to keep you alive.
Sure.
If you that's not because you doubt that, it means that you giving up on the idea. But you also have to be ready to sometimes, give up, to maybe come back, or to be like, no, that's not the right thing to do. I thought it would be lining up, but it's okay. We're humans, we got to just we got to check in with ourselves in our mind, in our environment, quite often, in order to survive and thrive, most importantly, not just survive.
Yeah, right. So you're saying, to kind of throw it back at you, right? You're saying that like your doubts lead you to reaffirm what you're looking at, or not second guess, but basically kind of do some additional analysis to kind of confirm it or affirm what you're doing, or go, yeah, actually I missed that. That line's not what I
Yeah,
thought it or hoped it would be.
exactly. And I think the same thing can be applied to everything, like your private life, your relationship, your professional life. I always say, bottom the line is, first you got to establish the frame. And if you're not happy with the frame, reframe. It's not that complicated. But the only way to reframe is to be able to be sharp. And one great way to do that is to avoid decision fatigue. That's something that I learned from our friend Thor. It's when you have too many options at your fingertips, well, it deteriorates your decision making.
Mm.
And so you have 25 things in your mind. Well, narrow it down to 3. What are the top 3 things you need to focus on? And that avoiding decision fatigue will allow cognitive reframing. It will allow you to turn a negative into a positive, to stay sharp under a situation and to reframe. And that's super important. So that ability to reframe is super important, and no matter what you do, whether you're flying a fighter jet or you changing a tire on your car that you just blew on the way to school to go drop your kid, or whether you're getting ready to jump off the Eiger with a wingsuit,
Yeah, no, 100%, man. And what about, so that's a bit about you dealing with it mentally, but how about, maybe critics or friends or family that are kind of, how do you deal with that? Like, I'm sure there's got to be some, objection at times, or especially something like that accident. Like, how are you dealing with any kind of external objection?
Well, yeah, it's a lot of criticism or things that you're gonna get. It's either it generally materializes 2 things: misunderstanding or worries. And it's either people are worried about you, or they just don't understand you, or sometimes both. And and so the way I deal with it is try to be as, yeah, sometimes if I'm, I don't want to dig in, I'm just gonna be irreverent and be like, well, that's what I do no matter what, and just deal with it. A lot of the time people push on their own insecurities on you, and it's, let's say, the existentially stagnant will always make the driven feel bad about themselves. And that just happened to you on social media with somebody, like, calling you out for being too hardcore. It's like, well, in the end, it's not you being too hardcore the problem. It's them not being able to deal with you being too hardcore. So,
Right.
so an easy way to go about it is to be like, fuck them. But for me, I'm I'm kind of a pleaser, and I can't take things too hard as a sensitive person, and this is why I like to break down and explain things. And when I do that, it still doesn't resonate, doesn't register, then I'm like, sorry, I can't do any more for you. Like, I took
Sure.
the time, which is also why I worked on that new documentary coming out called Adrenaline Sucks, because people keep calling me an adrenaline junkie or daredevil. It's the exact opposite of what we do. It shows a complete lack of education and misunderstanding, from the audience or from mainstream people that are like, oh, you're a daredevil. It's like, well, part of me is, that's probably mean, but part of me wants to be, well, you're a dumbass, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I can't say that, because some of these people really mean well. They just didn't spend time to reflect on the subject. So one night he came pouring out of me. I just broke down the whole process of what it's like to take on those mountain challenges, through skiing, base jumping, and then I occasionally surf big waves too. I can't call myself a big wave surfer, but a couple times a year I have the chance to go out with a couple friends that are well versed in that area and just trust my decision making under crisis situations, and they help me surf a couple 30-foot waves a year, which is awesome. But yeah, I I try to constructively break down that whole adrenaline sucks, and I do a fair amount of speaking engagements as well, and that's what I do. I spend the time to explain my journey and break it down and show the vulnerable side, but also the driven side, and then it's ethos, pathos, logos, and what is the meaning, what is the passion, and what are the key lessons you can learn from it. And that's what I try to share my journey as constructively as possible to hopefully inspire people, but more empower them to go and take on whatever they want to take. And for me, breaking down that, just setting the record straight about what I do and why I do it and how I do it was very important to me, to chip away at this fake image that has been built and imposed to everyone as being adrenaline junkies and daredevils, because that's not what we do. I
So
actually kind of don't really care about the rush anymore. The more I do it, the more I'm like, sometimes it's fun, but the more I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Like
so
I
so
seek
why do
serenity.
you
So
why do you do what you do?
what do I do? What I do? Because of for me, it was, first of all, it was passion. I remember being a 9-year-old boy and being so inspired by mountain people, and especially growing up in the Alps, you either witness some of the heroes and the legends, or you hear about what they've done. And I remember being a kid being like, whoa, that is absolutely crazy, like how could they do something like this? But for me, it wasn't crazy as putting a separation. It was a crazy of admiration. And I wanted to understand how they could do it, because I think secretly deep inside, I wanted to do it. At 9 years old, I saw a movie that showed, extreme skiers, snowboarders, skydivers, base jumpers, like the guys that did it all in the mountains. And I was like, that's it. That's the tribe I belong to. I just need to earn my place.
Mm.
So it was this desire, early on. But it's also for me, I think these men represented my, looking for outside influences outside of my home. I think these guys represented my archetype of manhood, people that had the courage to do whatever it takes to honor their passions, no matter how dangerous.
Mm.
And for me, accepting the risk was very compelling. I'm sure that's how a lot of wannabe fighter pilots, felt when they watched the first, Top Gun. They were like, dude, that Maverick guy, like that made them want to fly like air. It's the power of art, and I think because it exposed this non-community, and for me, so that was the first trigger, and it was really an intrinsic desire. But then when I was 18 years old, my sister committed suicide. I recognized the body, gave the news to my sisters, which was, being the messenger was the worst thing ever. It's still, I was still crying about it last week, and that's been 20 years ago, and, but it was a very empowering and inspiring moment, because, trauma is just as important as moments of joy, as long as you embark on the quest of fulfillment. Through the best thing you can wish to someone is to be to self-actualize and to be fulfilled. If you fulfilled, every emotion or every beautiful moment or hard moment will find its place. And for me, yeah, coming back from the funeral of my sister, it's the day I committed to my goals. I wanted to base jump. I wanted to do all these things, skiing or jumping or surfing, eventually big waves and things like that. And it's the day when I committed to reaching my goals, no matter how dangerous. So I think a lot of it was intrinsic desires, uh, inspiration through absorption of what others did, and then self-creation triggered by trauma. I think that's the reasons behind it. I think that's why I do what I do, because for me, I think passions are the meaning of our existence. And there's no, if you live a passionless life, well, you're not living life at all.
Yeah, I mean, and I love it. I mean, in your I heard a quote from you, something to the effect of like, you can't let fear stand in the way of your dreams. And I was like, wow, like, so that said, right? Are you fearless?
I'm the most scared person you've ever met. I overthink. I'm terrified all the time. I think my relationship with fear has evolved over the years. It's either fear can be a wall or it can be a propeller. And it's not a propeller if you ignore it, because if you ignore it, you're just canceling it out, right? You're just neutralizing it. Whereas fear is actually, I always say fear is your best friend. It's one of the most powerful emotions out there. It's the only emotion that'll trigger your full potential, right? It'll make you do the right things under the right situations if you train for it, right? We don't rise to the situation. We fall back to our level of training,
Right.
And I've definitely done that, like I rushed up in situations and I got away with it because somehow some of my skills or athletics from other areas could save my ass into a certain area, like wingsuit flying. I'm really diligent about it now, for example, because I just did it on and off for years and never took it seriously. And so I was never great at it. And now I'm actually putting in my time to be good at it because I want to. And yeah, I can't remember where I was going to go with this. Sorry.
No, you're saying that because I've learned that courage, and it's one of the reasons I just brought it into the Lions Guide theme was like,
It was fear. Yeah, sorry.
It was courage. Yeah, you were talking about fears and courage, and like you said something there like courage. Fear lets you go excel, or I can't quote it exactly at this moment, but like and what I learned courage to be was that doing the right thing despite your fears, right? And like courage as the virtue, and in your case, you're not fearless, but you're letting your fear show you exactly where you want to take your passion in a way.
Yeah, no, exactly. So now I remember where I was going to go with this. It's like, yeah, so my relationship with fear changed over the years, right? I first kind of ignored it, in my immature years. In my years of creation, then I tried to just manage my anxiety, which made me think that I was just managing my fear. And then now I just fully accept it. But it's not that I just accept fear, I accept every emotion. Like I just take it on, And just yesterday again, just jumping, I'm overthinking, I'm scared, and I always say that I breathe in the fear, just let it connect your mind with your body, and it's fear is an enabler to trigger your best abilities, and you just gotta let it just seep in through your veins, instead of just being like, well, okay, yeah, nobody's fearless, and anybody who tells you that is just full of shit, or they just lack introspection,
Sure.
And it's someone I really respect, but like, Andy Goggins, for example, he's stay hard, and this and that. And I agree with, and I really like a lot of the stuff he does and his drive, right? But I disagree with a lot of his approach on things, and it was something when he described jumping out of a plane. He's like, yeah, you just grab on your fear and you go and this and that. It's like, no, it's the worst thing you can do when you skydive, man. Like, you will be able to do it by doing it like that, but you will never excel at it. The only way to excel at something is to just find serenity in very stressful situations. And the only way to do that is to do it over and over again, and to really spend the time to accept every single emotion. I refuse to say that I'm a badass motherfucker out there when I go and jump. No, it's not what I do at all. I think I'm a serene motherfucker, like I just get there and just like, when I go, wow, boom, you're just connected, you're sharp, but you chill, but you're very intentional at the same time. Intention can only be super efficient when you find a level of serenity, and peace. And that's super important. I'm not the guy who's going to be like, yeah, I got to be hard and do it. It's like, no, I was like that at some point, but now I just, no, yeah, I want to be more like I don't know, almost like a flying yogi in a sense, that's it,
No, and look, man, I like this is an area that I admire because I think like there's these certain personalities that seemingly are one dimensional, right? Like to your point, like to stay hard all the time. But like even as you say that, and what I've seen of you as an example, like your range, right? And I'll say like a singer has a range, right?
Yeah.
And I think as far as you as a high performer, you've got a range of, you can have a ton of fun, you can get wild and crazy and run naked down the trail like you were talking about yesterday, we saw on Super Frenchie, and you can be the very strategic and intentional athlete, and you can also be that calm, like there's not just go hard, be crazy. Like that's my one-dimensional approach to everything. Like you've got range, and you
Well,
apply it appropriately.
Thank you, and I appreciate it. I think it's important to have range because otherwise you become a parody of yourself.
Mm.
And I've been a parody of myself at some point. I think every high achieving person said, "Oh, that's the formula. Just stick to the formula." It's like, no, dude, the formula gets fine tuned. The recipe gets better and better with age, but you just got to have the honesty and the diligence to explore the recipe, and that comes with a lot of introspection and reframing.
Yeah. What did becoming a father, how did that change, or did it change your approach to what you do?
It made me want to go extra hard at the time. Now it's taken on a different place. When For me, it was a very frustrating process. Like I loved my son, and I was very involved as as a father. I still am. Obviously, they'll never go away. Like I wanted to be. I had a high expectation as a father for myself, but at the same time, I became a father right after a big crash when I had to rebuild myself.
Mm.
And then as a result, that also affected my relationship at home, which was, and that, and all of a sudden it just kind of becomes a big blur of, a relationship that is becoming unfulfilling, and then fatherhood becoming a hindrance when you're trying to reach your goals and rebuild yourself. It was just too much at once. I didn't really I didn't really have, I don't want to say I didn't have the maturity. I just didn't have the, I didn't have the, I don't want to say that I didn't have the opportunity. I had the opportunity. I don't think I had the mindset or the maturity maybe at the time to really be able to take all that stuff on and really embrace it. So for me, like going extra hard and rebuilding myself and getting it done no matter what was more like my way of doing it. But at the same time, I did find a meaning in that too, to be able to show my son what it means to live intentionally. But I still, again, did a lot of stuff with my son would help me really bond really tremendously with him. We were very, very close. We do a ton of stuff together. Because for me, I think fatherhood is pointless without mentorship, and I really found the value of fatherhood for me in mentorship. Like putting food on the table and keeping a roof over your head is commendable, but for me, it's just like, yeah, whatever. If that's all fatherhood entails, like it sucks, So, but like for me, really taking on that role of mentor and guide for my son, teaching him to ski, taking him skateboarding, even though I'm a horrible skateboarder, he's far exceeded my ability at skateboarding. He's an amazing skateboarder already at 9. He's dropping vert ramp and doing kick flips and 360s, and he's smooth and so poised about it. And I love watching him skateboard. I take him, we go skateboard, we go surfing, and it's almost like he became like a little brother, and we do a lot of cool stuff together while allowing him to bloom on his own. It's like, You don't need to be a Super Frenchie 2.0, be yourself,
Mm.
And I know it could be very overbearing and very challenging to have a father who's a pro, because there's social pressure and stuff. Like, I'm not putting that pressure on him because I don't want to. It's unnecessary. But I do put pressure on him to do well at whatever he chooses to do. Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
Right.
There's no point, to do something just to do it. It's just going to be another story of celebration and mediocrity, which is not acceptable in my book. But if this is what someone wants to do with their life, that's fine. I'm not here to impose my views on someone. I'm here to guide my son.
Yeah.
And so now fatherhood has really, it really happened on the climb to Mont Blanc, when I was about to ski base on the top. Super technical jump with zero air margin. I'd been thinking about it for 8 years. It was in 2019, which was really the year of the Phoenix for me. This is really when I freaking grew from my ashes from crashing, 6 years prior. And I used to never think about my son when I'd be in the mountains or taking on a challenge, because it was a weakness. It made me soft. Making me soft was, a pathway to getting hurt or dying. And so I chose to compartmentalize. But compartmentalization is only a short-term survival mechanism. You can't operate under compartmentalizing all the time. Otherwise, your whole life will fall apart. And for me, on the climb to Mont Blanc is the first time I was thinking about my son so much in a conversation we had. And at each step, I was thinking of the words that he mentioned. It was just resonating in my head. And he was the first time I realized he was empowering me to reach my goals as an individual. And now yesterday, he was at the drop zone. He was just at the landing area. He would skateboard and then play with his, watch a movie on his phone or play on his little Nintendo Switch, and then come and watch some jumps. And I remember being in the plane and jumping out. And me, I always kept him away a little bit from jumping. I never, hid it from him, but I never took him to jumps, whatever. It was kind of like a distraction that I didn't need. And the last few days, this was the first time that I'm jumping with him there. And I'm like, well, don't fuck up, man. You don't want to plow into the ground in front of your kid and traumatize him for life if something wrong happens. So you got to stick it extra hard, like you got to be perfect. And yeah, and as I landed, it was, smooth landing, beautiful flight. And he's like, Papa, that was a beautiful landing. Nice work. I was like, oh, thank you, And so fatherhood has, it's made me sharper, I think. And I think even more intentional, I think. I think a lot of people give up on what they want to do as they become parents, because they think it's just honorable to for their dreams to take the back seat and just to be there for their kids. Like, no, the best thing you can do is to lead by example and show your kids what it takes to reach your goals. Like, my son sees me training every day, like at 4, he would drag me out of bed and be like, I have to do my 20 ollies before I go to school. I'd be like, okay, that's cool. Like, and if you embody drive to your loved ones, they will mirror that drive, because they know that it's just what you got to do to reach your goals. And he understood that at an early age, and it's still, so he's, my son has become he's always been a huge source of inspiration, I think, but now he's really, he's really become a not only just an inspiration, but a source of strength for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's you haven't said the word yet, but our children almost serve, to your point about setting the example, like they almost make that an obligation, right? Like, to be our best, so that they see the best, what the best could be, right? And again, I honor your point too, that you're saying earlier about being Frenchie 2.0 or whatever. But I was talking to Joel this week, and I was like, this whole thing of wanting to be like you. Someone goes, hey, I want to be like you, and I'm like, no, look, even to my own kids, like I don't want anyone to be like me, right? I want them to be like them, the best version of them, right? Like anything I'm doing, even back to kids, for the sake of my kids, is, like you said, to set an example of seeing where you can go, like where you can take your life. And it's not come follow my footsteps. It's like, hey, this is an example of someone that's like you, chasing their passions with perseverance, in really intentionally living fulfilled, right? Like
Yeah.
that's life right there. And
Yeah, I think, for me, it's really about showing my son that, nobody else is going to live your life for you
mm,
except you. So it's okay to be selfish. It's not okay to be egocentrical. You know, not the whole universe doesn't revolve around you,
mhm.
but it's okay to be dedicated and driven to your own quest. And dedicated to your own quest and being driven to reach your goals. That's super important. But it's also then you have to show the equilibrium, like, okay, I'm going to be there for the people that I love, but I'm not going to forget about self-actualizing as well.
Mhm.
This way you can walk that fine line, and that's where the fruit is, and but if you go fully one side or the other, well, you either live you live a wasted life for yourself or a wasted life for others, so balance it between the two, be there for
Yeah.
the people you love and honor your passions.
Well, and
That's how you
it's
can do.
like it's this point that I try to explain to people sometimes. It's like, look, man, it's not one thing. Like to what you're saying, it's not all in and forget everyone else.
Yeah.
It's not like give up on all my dreams to focus on everyone else. It's everything. Like everything matters. There's no one thing. It's everything. It's that
Yeah.
your social interactions, your support system, as well as your physical health and ability and your emotional health and ability, your spiritual health and ability, right? Like everything. It's not one thing. Unfortunately, there's not the one check in the box that's going to make everything happen. It's freaking everything, everything.
Well, it's life, right? It's actually your body. Everything is connected. It's like acupuncture, man. You put a freaking needle in your toe and somehow it releases something in your neck. It's the same thing with life.
And you were telling me yesterday, if you wouldn't mind sharing, similarly, the impact of your influence. I think you said you had your nephew over visiting or whatever, and
Yeah. Yeah. So I had my nephew visiting for, the first time in the US, and spending time with his cousin, and he was going to a little summer camp for a week, but spent a week before that with his cousin and me, and obviously I spent time with my nephew, on and off for the years, but I never had him. Now he's a 15-year-old kid, and he just spent one-on-one time with his uncle, right? And I'm like, well, shit, what am I gonna, what should I do? I gotta make it, worth his time in America. It's his first time here. We gotta make it a good vacation. I'm like, well, I don't necessarily know what to do, but he's just gonna be on the Super Frenchie schedule. I'm just gonna take him and do what we do. So I took him rock climbing and took him swimming in like glacial lakes and went hiking and did a bunch of stuff, right? And I repeatedly just threw him out of his comfort zone because my sister is an amazing person, but she's more like the slight homebody type. She's a great skier. She likes to enjoy physical activities as a hobby, but she's not necessarily like a super physically or athletically driven person. She's very smart, speaks 7 languages, is an engineer in aeronautics, now does aerospatial, was 3 years ahead in school. So she's way beyond my intellect. I guess I got more like the physical side, right? And so I just, he's a great kid. Not necessarily in like, he's, great tennis player, has always been, again, same thing, like active in some physical sport, but not super driven by it, right? So definitely on the softer side physically, but really sweet kid, very smart emotionally and mentally. And I just took him on. We threw him off a bridge. He went bungee jumping. He was like, so he really wanted to do it, but he was last second. He was too scared to go, so we just pushed him. And he fell, and I was like, ah! And then he came back up, and I was like, oh shit, my sister's gonna be pissed. But no, he was like, thank you so much for pushing me. I needed it. That was his words. And like, he's like, I want to go skydiving next time. And I was like, so all this stuff. So I realized that my goal was not to be like the hard uncle. My goal was to guide him, but kind of let him do his thing at the same time and be like, listen, you're the one in charge right now, and also put myself in his shoes. He's going to visit his uncle in America, who's a professional skier and base jumper. So obviously he probably puts me on like this crazy weird pedestal, like this crazy adrenaline guy again, or whatever, like the guy who's super confident and does everything no matter what. And we had some great conversations, and anyway, he lost like 5 kilos or something like that. Like he came home and now he's starting to take rock climbing lessons. He loves rock climbing. It's like awesome. Like my sister was like, wow, you changed his life. That was amazing. I was like, well, I didn't really do anything. I just took him along so he could do all the activities that we do. And he did that with his cousin. So he could see his 9-year-old cousin that would just climb around like a little goat. And his uncle just took him around, and he was this 15-year-old kid and was not necessarily as coordinated in some of those situations, but then he figured it out because he had all the tools. He just needed someone to open the door for him, and we're driving. I was driving him back to the airport, and in the car he's like, Uncle Matt. That's how he calls me. Uncle Matt, were you ever like not confident? And I'm like, well, listen, Alessandro, let me just say something right now. Everybody out there is fucking full of shit and fully scared. That's just the way it is. Nobody is 100% confident. We all have insecurities, and I have a ton of insecurities. I had a ton of these growing up. Now I'm very comfortable with myself, but there's still a lot of things that I'm not, that I know where I'm super weak, and there are other areas where I know I'm super, that have, strength or extra ability. And I'm aware of my strength. I'm aware of my weaknesses, but I overthink things all the time. I'm scared of everything, and it's just like I've somehow figured out a way to do all this stuff, and the cool kid that you see in school who's like acting super confident, well, he's probably the least confident out of everybody. So just put that through your mind. Like it's nobody is 100% confident. And if they are, it means that they don't have any introspection, and they're just living a shallow life, And he's like, oh, wow, really? I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm still, confident about so many things. But you can practice your confidence in certain areas, and it will help you into others. And he's like, all right, okay, thank you, Uncle Matt. And like, oh, it was a cool conversation. It was the first time I could have this. He's not a little kid anymore. He's 15 years old. He's about to become an adult. It was great to have this conversation with him, and I didn't do much. All I did was just kind of like share with him a different life that he's exposed to, and it resonated, luckily, but it also takes a special person. Like some other kids would have been like, fuck this, like that was the worst week of my life. He put me on like a ladder between rocks with no rope or safety, no protection. I thought I was gonna fall. He threw me off like a 100-meter bridge attached to a bungee. Like he made me dive into like super cold water in the mountains. Like that guy's a dick. I don't want to hang out with him anymore. No, luckily it resonated. So
you would definitely get a different call from your sister than the one that you.
Well, actually, I talked to her. Actually, I talked to her again a few days ago, and she was like, again, Matthias, thank you so much. Like, you did so much for him, like stuff that we would not do as parents, that we don't do.
Yeah.
And we're not able to expose him to that, like, because that's not necessarily what we do. But now that we know what to do, we can encourage it, though, So they signed him up for rock climbing lesson. He's starting September 10th, like a sketch through the French Alpine Club, and which is awesome. Rock climbing is one of the best activities you can do. It helps you physically, mentally, helps you to calm down under stressful situations. And when you're fucking scared rock climbing, you got to actually slow down. And that's a great skill in life. When things are overwhelming, just take a deep breath and slow down and take a step back and just assess the situation so you can power through. And yeah, I'm so happy that was helpful for him, but I'm really curious to see what his future is going to look like now that he experienced all that, and that he's applying his focus on certain areas. But like he's already a great, very skilled person. Like he's an amazing artist. He draws super well. He's super smart. He is already trilingual, speaks French, Italian, English. So it's like well-versed person, and it's just more like the physical side. He didn't really explore the way, but I think he always had that desire inside of him. He just never explored that in a way and linked his physical with his mental. And I think that's what we're able to trigger, I guess, for him on that side, and on his little trip in the US, and a week together. So it was great.
I love it, and that's what I love about you and your story, which is, like we've been talking about, recently, is that this misconception that someone watches someone like you and they go, man, he's everything that I'm not. Like, no, man, he's everything that you are. He's just taking it on differently. And you can too, right? Like you know who you want to be. And despite the fears, the critics, whatever, like you're on a mission,
Yeah.
like the quote you mentioned, the Legionnaires earlier, like you're on a mission and you're not letting fear prevent you from going after that. And that's not just you. That's everyone has those fears and those doubts and that lack of confidence, or, I'll say also like the lack of conforming, right? Like we mentioned lightly today, like the mediocrity, right? Piece.
Yeah.
And there's this element today, especially that, people like there's so much mediocrity, people almost fear like or fear like non-conforming with the herd, of mediocrity and stepping out and being more. And right, like there's that.
Well, yeah, I think it's there's two sides to this. Let me try to gather my thoughts. First, there's also a negative connotation, I think, with not sticking with the herd, because there's, especially in America right now, because you have so many like extreme polarizing movements, that if you don't stick with the herd, it means that you're going against the herd, and it means that you all of a sudden you just very fanatical about something, which comes in a negative way. So people are afraid to take a stance. But at the same time, taking a stance doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be like these whole like, you know I mean, I'm trying to not get political here, but it's like you're gonna fall into one side or the other, or all of a sudden, you stand up for something and you kind of go against the grain, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you're a MAGA guy. It's like, well, no, it's not like, it's not necessarily this way, but at the same time, if you don't, it's the old quote, right? If you don't stand up for anything, you stand up for nothing. And if you have an opinion and if you're driven about something, it's going to be polarizing, but don't take that personally. It's because your duty is actually to educate people. And if they're still polarizing and still don't understand you, then it's just because maybe their insecurities are so, their self-projection is so strong that you won't be able to solve that for them,
Yeah.
but at least you shared as much as you could. And I think obviously with great risk always comes great rewards. I mean, not always. If you fail, you won't have anything, right? But in order to get great rewards, you got to take great risk. But at the same time, it's not a given that you'll have the great rewards, right? But if you live a life of predictability and you just try to do whatever seems to be right by the book, it's going to result only in two things: mediocrity and existential frustration. And that's something that even at the age of 9 years old, that I was not willing to accept in my life. It's like, I'm not going to live my life like that. This is a waste of a life.
It is. Yeah.
Fucking waste, and, man, it's, I'm not a religious person either. Like I'm not saying like God exists. I'm not saying he doesn't exist. Except we don't know, it's like, whatever, all this stuff is just beyond you. Like everybody tells you, I talk to you guys. Well, they full of shit. They're just like picturing this, but another person is just like, well, God doesn't exist. Well, we don't know, like we might be just a little like atom in like the toilet seat of a God. We don't know. Like the universe is so big. Like we might be a social experiment of some alien species. We don't know any of that stuff. And that's why you call God, this guy who created you and put you in a cage to, study you. Like, oh, let's throw a little COVID in there and see, interesting. This is how they react. Note that, guys, don't do this, right? Like they fucked it up. We can't do this, like that might be all we are. But all this we don't know, because it's beyond our human form, right? And I just started drifting. I don't even know where I'm going with this ever again. But it's yeah. Yeah, I don't remember.
Oh man, but it's right. Well, I guess what you're saying is there's not necessarily any right or wrong, but if you're not following your passions, that's wrong. Like you know what I mean. Like there's no there. Sometimes there's a right and right, but as far as like chasing your passions is just something there's yeah, man. And I guess to your point, you were talking about risk and reward, right? Like, and that's that. Like a part of the risk is going against the tide, right? Like the folks' self-reflection on you not towing the line and just going with what the norms are, there's going to be push. But that's a part of the test of, I think you were saying this earlier, right? It's a part of the test
It's a
for your
test of
desire.
dedication.
Yeah,
Exactly.
testing your
Yeah.
dedication. Yeah, like you said.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I when I woke up in the hospital after my big crash, and get out of the coma, I'm trying to get home with my son, and then I wake up and my mom is there. I'm like, oh, damn it, I got to deal with this, like I don't want to have all this negative stuff around me, and then I did question for a couple of days whether I should keep pursuing my vocation or at least the specific goals. But then once the fog kind of dissipated a little bit, and coming out of the coma, you're not super sharp. But actually, I had one of the biggest moments of clarity, because when I got out of the coma, I was like, well, technically, this is what you signed up for.
Mm-hmm.
By accepting the risk, you're accepting the success or the potential glory or whatever you see through that or experience through reaching your achievement. But you also have to accept failing, which in my world means being crippled for life or being really physically maimed or dying. And right there, I was like, well, that's what it is in itself. Right now, you laying in this hospital bed in this situation with a brain that's bleeding and a broken femur right before your son's about to be born. That's what you signed up for.
Mm.
It is a test to your dedication in itself. So do you have what it takes to get back on your feet? And that's when your ethos is super important. Like, why are you doing this? Your why. The strength of your why will determine whether you get back on your feet or not.
Yeah.
And for me, my sister was there, and middle sister, she's the twin sister of our sister who passed, and she said something that resonated so deeply with me, because she said, you crashed and you're in horrible shape right now, and you got to get home to your son who's about to be born, but you're honoring her sister by living intentionally. And these were the words I needed to hear at that time, because that resonated so deep in me, because it's not what started the quest, but that's what triggered the commitments, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's it. This is what I signed up for. And I'm really messed up right now, but it's intention. I'm living with intention, and intentions comes with collateral damage.
Yeah. Well, and you were mentioning earlier, right? Like when you take the risks and without risk reward, and sure, you might fail and whatever, but as you were saying that as well, I was thinking like, but there's value in failure too, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
right? Like those are where you're going to learn your greatest lessons, as with here, you could say, hey, I crashed in a mountain. That was a big failure. Like, but look how much the value you came away from that with was that reassurance to your why, your commitment. Like
Well,
that, despite that, you're still pursuing.
Exactly. And I think this can be applied to obviously any environment. Look at in the world of business, for example, you do a product launch, and you launch this product, and you botch a part of the product launch system, or you mess up on your marketing 4Ps, product, price, place, promotion. Like the product is sick, you have the promotion's amazing, you have the point of sale, but you priced it too high, and the thing freaking tanked. And then all of a sudden, that's super valuable right there. You probably had one of the best performing products on the market, but your sales were affected by the fact that you priced the product wrong. Well, then learn from that, and the next product launch you do will be on point, and that's okay. And then, so there's tremendous, and then you might become a market leader, but becoming a market leader could not have happened without this failure.
Yeah.
And for me, ski base jumping from the top of Mont Blanc could have not happened if I didn't crash 6 years prior into the cliff, because I learned so much about the mental approach, the physical approach, how to actually check off all the boxes to be able to reach my goal. And I might have been able to pull off Mont Blanc, but I think I would have pulled that off in a very unsafe manner. It was not a jump for explosiveness. It was a jump that needed to be approached with a very poised and solid attitude. It wasn't a jump of exuberance. It was a jump of consistency, and that was important. Oh, my GoPro just turned off.
I guess that's our warning, man. Well, no, I know you got to go get on with your day, but real quick before we wrap up, like, so what are you working on now? What's hot? What's the next big?
So I'm flying to the Alps in 5 days. I got to do a couple media things, and then I just got a new wingsuit, which is what I'm training with right now. I'm putting in my time finally, and there's a couple beautiful flights I want to do in the Alps back at home. Then I'm going to a GoPro event for the athletes in Interlaken in Switzerland. So that's going to be super fun. and really exciting. And then I'm going to spend my birthday at home in the Alps in front of Mont Blanc. And then after that, I got several days of flying my wingsuit in the Alps, and then come back. September 30th. So I'll have like 3 weeks in the Alps, and just go back to the homeland and work on projects. And then after that, getting ready for winter. I got several first descents that I'm trying to do, and first ski base jumps in the Alps. Some very daring ones, and I'm trying to hopefully by fall 2023 break another world record. So I got a full plate right now.
I love it, man. And also, I know you're booking speaking engagements. You've got Adrenaline Sucks, like quick.
Yeah, exactly. So I just finished a new documentary called Adrenaline Sucks. Right now it's being submitted to film festivals. It's not going to be available for viewing outside of film festivals, and but it will be available through speaking engagements. So I'm going on a Adrenaline Sucks speaking tour, and showing the movie, sharing some of the lessons, sharing some of the journey, the steps along the way, the glorious and glamorous ones, but also the more vulnerable and I guess more shameful parts of it too, like showing the human journey. Yeah. And then we can have a conversation about that, so.
And who is that kind of ideal for? Who would be ideally someone that
for the Adrenaline Sucks tour,
for the speaking engagements, right?
Like speaking engagements. So I just finished one for a company called HST Pathways. That is a software company within the medical world. So it could be corporate, gigs. Like I've done some for, Nike or cloud computing companies, doing for NetApp, things like that. I've done things like TEDx Berkeley, things like that, but also do some private things. So we're going to do some theaters, speaking engagements in convention centers, and so anybody from the outdoor world or more like the outside of the private kind of speaking engagements, people can come in and get a ticket and come and watch the movie and hear the talk and throw in their questions and ideas, and so we can exchange. That's the idea, is for me to not just show what I'm doing, is to trigger interesting conversations for people to express their ideas, and for me also to learn from people that are watching all this stuff. It's my whole goal with this is to share my journey constructively, to not only just entertain, not only just inspire, but hopefully empower people to reach their own goals, and then they can also empower somebody else. It's I guess that's part of the mentorship program. I guess right. That's I'm trying. So we're going on the Adrenaline Sucks tour, which is going to be taking part between October and February, October 2022 and February 2023. After that, I got to go, back to the Alps and do a lot of my mountaineering projects. And spring and summer, people don't want to go and be locked inside and watch a movie and listen to a talk. They want to do that more in the fall and the winter, when the weather may be not as enjoyable outside. So yeah, I'm working on this right now. And then I'm also talking with a few companies right now that could hopefully, help reach my goals and objectives athletically. I'm currently talking with a few brands to hopefully get a title sponsor, so a brand featuring my parachute and my headwear exclusively, so I can expand my sponsorship portfolio to be able to reach my goals. And but no matter what, these goals are going to happen no matter what. It's just always easier when you can have a company want to align with your goals. So that's what I'm working on right now. And just everything's a stepping stone to everything, and the quest never ends. So you got to keep going, and you'll have time to chill when you're dead.
Yeah, absolutely. Where you sleep when you're dead. Yeah, man. Yeah. I love it, bro. Well, hey, man, and real quick, where can people find you?
Oh, so I guess the three most efficient ways is obviously Instagram, Super Frenchie Official, Super Frenchie Official as well on Facebook, and Super Frenchie IE at the end .com. That's my website, and you can reach me there or book a speaking engagement, or if you want to feature Adrenaline Sucks for your events or your company event, or do an event together, then we can do that with we can organize an event with my manager or tour manager and figure it out. And that's it. Yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me. And info@superfrenchie.com is a good email, or you can email my manager, carlos@superfrenchie.com. That's it.
I love it, man. Hey, well, dude, it's been an honor to have you on. I appreciate everything you've given us. It is that, man. It's super empowering, man. I love your story. I appreciate you sharing, the experience and the takeaways. And super or not, man, you're perfectly human, but going after doing your thing, man. And that's what I love about you, and keep doing it, man. It's
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. It was a great opportunity to, yeah, be on your podcast and exchange ideas. And I love, yeah, hearing your thoughts. And yeah, it's always great to exchange ideas of how to live intentionally and constructively with a person who's achieved that in a different field. And thank you so much for the opportunity.
yeah, man. Thank you. We'll talk again real soon.